Welcome to online training on impact evaluation for evidence-based development for the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs of the Gambia. Module 1, Lesson 1. This module is an introduction to results-based monitoring and evaluation. The outline of this module is that we'll share the learning outcomes. It has got 2 modules. The first module is monitoring and evaluation, foundation and concept. Lesson 2 of this module is monitoring systems and evaluation basics for evidence-based monitoring and evaluation of development programs. And the learning outcomes for module 1 for both lessons is that basic foundation of monitoring and evaluation concepts will have been refreshed to the participants. And then through that, it also seeks that participants demonstrate basics of how monitoring systems and evaluations provide a crucial source of evidence for appraising development interventions' long-term worth. Module 1, Lesson 1. Monitoring and evaluation foundation and concepts. The expected outcomes of this course and this lesson are that participants will be able to appreciate basic foundation of monitoring and evaluation. They will also be able to demonstrate understanding of basic M&E concepts and particular use of the log frame approach. They will also be able to understand different approaches to program evaluation and understand differences between quantitative and qualitative approaches to evaluation. Introduction. There are several approaches that are available which can be used to evaluate programs and policies. Of key significance are the 3 which will be the focus of our sharing in this lesson. Monitoring, operational evaluation, and impact evaluation. These are instrumental in terms of enabling planners to be able to establish the worthiness of the interventions. Monitoring tracks key indicators of progress over the course of a program as it is being implemented as a basis on which to assess outcomes of the intervention. Operational evaluation, on the other hand, examines how effectively programs were implemented and where there are gaps between planned and what has been realized by way of outcomes. As you can see, this one tracks how the implementation has unfolded from start to finish. Impact evaluation studies, on the other hand, look at whether changes in well-being are indeed due to the program intervention and not to other factors. And this is central to the notion of attribution and contribution of an intervention to the population that is targeted. And so we see that evaluation can be conducted through quantitative methods, which essentially entail survey data collection, as well as simulations that mimic the intervention before or after it is introduced. The simulations are the models that are used to draw an aspired element of a program. And this will be the basis of modules 3 and 4 to avail tools that will be useful in terms of generating and undertaking those simulations. Evaluation can either be ex ante, which predicts program impacts using data before the intervention has been undertaken or implemented. Or it can be ex post evaluation, which analyzes outcomes after a program has been implemented. Reflexive comparisons are a type of ex post evaluations. This is so because they tend to examine program impacts through the differences that exist in participant outcomes before and after the program has been implemented, on the one hand, as well as differences across participants and non-participants. This is where you would be having the familiar aspect of control. So the control versus the treatment. The participants of an intervention constitute the treatment, and the non-participants constitute the control. Let us look at the relationship between monitoring and evaluation in a nutshell. Monitoring entails continuous undertaking, and so it is a continuous function. It uses systematic data collection on specified indicators. This is very important. In the first place, there must be a set of indicators of interest that will have to be identified. And then the monitoring process will consistently over time collect data relating to those specified indicators so that we can track them. As a result of this function, monitoring tends to feed management and main stakeholders with key information that is able to mirror or manifest signs of extent of progress of the intervention. It also provides strides in terms of achievement of objectives, but fundamentally so, it also avails information that reflects progress in allocated resource use in the implementation of the program. As a result of this, we see that the resulting monitoring information and data are used to evaluate performance of program interventions. By comparing program outcomes with the specified intended targets, monitoring serves a very crucial role of helping improve policy design and implementation. The data that is collected systematically and objectively relating to specified indicators provide pointers in the effectiveness or flaws in the design of the policy, as well as the rolling out of implementation. It also promotes accountability and kicks off dialogue among policymakers and key stakeholders in the intervention. What is evaluation? Evaluation is a systematic and objective assessment of the results that have been achieved by implementing the program. In this context, we see that evaluation seeks to prove that changes in the target audience of an intervention are due only to the specific policies that have been undertaken. And this is the central issue of attribution. Monitoring and evaluation taken together have been referred to as the famous thing we are all familiar with as M&E. So monitoring and evaluation as a system can include process evaluation, which examines how programs operate and focuses on problems of service delivery in the context of program implementation. Monitoring and evaluation can also include cost-benefit analysis, whereby comparison is made of program costs against the benefits that accrue from program implementation. M&E can also include impact evaluations, which quantify the effects of implementing a program on individuals, households, and communities. As we can see, all these three aspects of process evaluation, cost-benefit analysis, and impact evaluations are part of a good monitoring and evaluation system and are usually carried out by the implementing agency to complement the validity of the evidence that is generated that speaks to the effects that an intervention is having on the targeted beneficiaries. So monitoring and evaluation system comprises target indicators that are usually represented in the 4 clusters of the logical framework, which are pitched at input, output, outcome, and impact levels within the log frame. Let us look at operational evaluation and impact evaluation. What is the essence of operational evaluation? Any ideas based on the experiences we have had? As the name operational connotes, Operational evaluation seeks to understand whether implementation of an intervention unfolded according to plan. It is a retrospective assessment that is based on the initial project status as defined within the M&E framework. And it tracks how what was planned has been able to turn out in the course of implementation. What is at the core of operational evaluation? Well, operational evaluation is based on the interviews that are undertaken with the key players within the program. These are the beneficiaries that the program targets, the officials that are responsible for program implementation, as well as other stakeholders that have got a key role and interest in the program itself. Operational evaluation particularly focuses at inputs and outputs of the program. On the other hand, impact evaluation determines whether it is possible to identify an effect that can be linked and tied to a program. And so it determines to what extent the measured effect of an intervention can be attributed to the program itself, not to some other causes that has affected the beneficiaries. In this regard, we see that the focus of the impact evaluation is on the latter stages of the log frame of the monitoring and evaluation system. That is, the outcomes and the impacts. So as we can see, these are at a higher level in comparison to the focus that operational evaluation dwells on with regard to the inputs and outputs within the program design. Collectively, operational evaluations and impact evaluations, both of them tend to be complementary rather than substitutes, as we'll see later. Operational evaluation, therefore, should be part and tends to be part of a normal procedure within the implementing agency. Operational evaluation and the general practice of M&E are the integral parts of a project implementation. On the other hand, impact evaluation is characterized by being data-driven because it has to generate evidence that can isolate other effects so that it is squarely able to attribute that evidence from a particular source. In this regard, impact evaluation attempts to minimize unverifiable assumptions when attributing causal effects to a population that was the target for an intervention. The other distinguishing characteristic of impact evaluation is that it is not imperative for each and every project to undertake an impact evaluation study. Why? It is because impact evaluations are generally time and resource intensive, and therefore should be applied selectively in order to mirror and manifest value for money. As I said earlier on, that operational evaluation and impact evaluation are complementary in nature. Impact evaluation can benefit immensely from templates used for operational evaluations for more rigorous impact assessment. For example, in a varying context of the data that has been generated, as well as where policy effort was directed. Impact evaluation also relies significantly on information that gets generated through project offices. And this one becomes key in terms of facilitating the interpretation of impact results, because they need to be traced where they're emanating from. So we see that the identified impacts from impact evaluations are assessed not only for the magnitude or the breadth, but also in terms of statistical significance. And this aspect of statistical significance will be the focus of Module 3 in terms of impact evaluation designs. Impact evaluations in serving the accountability function is significantly aligned with results-based management and monitoring contribution of development assistance towards meeting sustainable development goals, as well as the domestication of these sustainable development goals as reflected in the national development plans, for example. Purposes of impact evaluation. As the area alluded to, impact evaluations serve accountability purpose by ensuring that development actions actually lead to development outcomes, but also facilitate learning by offering evidence base for selecting and designing development interventions that are likely to be effective in fostering outcomes of interest. But there's also the decision-making premise that impact evaluation avails through the evidence that it provides, which will help guide policymakers and development practitioners. What is the significance of impact evaluation? Impact evaluation's significance is manifested in providing empirical estimates of the causal effects that are attributable to a specific intervention and the statistical significance of those effects. We agree now that the interest of impact evaluation is to avail evidence, specific evidence that can be traced to the effects of an intervention. And that evidence must be objective and unquestionable. Therefore, deriving reliable knowledge and evidence from development operations depends on the impact evaluations. As we'll see later on, This calls for systematic and focused effort in designing impact evaluations so that they are able to generate evidence that will be unquestionable. So in this regard, we see that impact evaluations tend to serve a number of roles. Firstly, they define and determine whether an intervention is effective. They are also able to avail information that can be used for comparison of options for making interventions more effective. Evidence from impact evaluations can inform assumptions that underpin economic analysis of specific investments, as well as broader strategies for sectors. These are the key pillars that characterize this course as underscored in the realm of evidence-based development. Let us look at quantitative and qualitative impact assessments. Governments, civil society organizations, as well as development planners are interested to determine the effectiveness of programs or policies that are implementing that have far-reaching goals, such as lowering poverty or increasing employment. Such interests, such quests are often possible only through impact evaluations based on hard evidence that are generated through survey data collections, as well as through related qualitative and quantitative approaches that become part and parcel of the impact evaluation process. We will note that qualitative information is essential to a sound quantitative assessment. So we see the complementarity of qualitative and quantitative impact assessments. For example, qualitative information will be useful in terms of enabling understanding of local socio-cultural and institutional context within which a program was implemented. But also that qualitative information will be vital in terms of providing program and participant details, which will eventually be able to augment and complement the quantitative assessment. Qualitative information help in terms of identifying mechanisms through which programs might be having an impact on the intended beneficiaries. Through, for example, identifying local policymakers or individuals that are key in determining the course of implementation, thereby being very instrumental in terms of aiding the operational evaluation that may be undertaken within the program. A qualitative assessment on its own, however, cannot assess outcomes against relevant alternatives, the counterfactual outcomes. Here, we see that qualitative information cannot really indicate what might happen in the absence of a program. Quantitative analysis is also very vital in addressing potential statistical biases in program impacts. Therefore, from this background, we see that a mixture of qualitative as well as quantitative methods is inherently useful in providing a comprehensive view of programs' effectiveness. And therefore, an appropriate balance needs to be maintained and reached at the design stage in terms of the qualitative vis-a-vis the quantitative approaches that will be inculcated in delivering the impact evaluation program. Any comments and questions? There's a quiz which comprises a few sets of questions which will be administered by each individual participant, just to gauge our understanding of the lesson. Thank you for your kind attention. Merci beaucoup. Jerry Jeff. Abaraka.